Hey, friends. I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest on the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. I sat with Jenny Lethbridge earlier this week, and we talked all things human design. The interesting thing about this conversation is not only what is human design and how can it impact our personal development, how can it allow us to have a more in-depth relationship with ourselves, but I truly believe that people come into our lives at the very perfect time. I have been intrigued by human design for a few years now, and I just never looked into it. And then lo and behold, last year, I was introduced to Jenny Lethbridge at the perfect time in my life where I was shifting my own career and my own business. And at the same time, I was introduced to Jenny. We had a beautiful conversation in a coaching session around my human design. And it was literally the night before I was about to launch into this Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast as part of my Lucy Smiles brand. And what she was able to share with me the night before I started training on podcasting was impeccable. And it was almost like she was not only reading my mind, but she was reading my DNA. And so Jenny Lethbridge is a healer. She's a wayshower, and she also utilizes her amazing gift to teach people around understanding their human design code. She goes in depth through what does that even mean, how we can use it to positively impact not only our businesses, but our personal life, our relationships, and it just goes on and on. So I hope that you get super plugged into this call, to this beautiful, beautiful interview. Please share this with anyone that you may think can utilize this amazing information for their own path. Make sure to subscribe, and definitely I would highly recommend following Jenny Lethbridge, reaching out to her on her website or her social media, all of which will be in the description. And here we go. Enjoy. Hey, friends, and welcome to Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. I have a gem of a show today. I am so excited to be sitting here with Jenny Lethbridge. Jenny is in Australia, and I met Jenny not even a year ago through the work that she does with human design. And also, I had never really been privy to what human design is. And so I'm really excited to dive deep with Jenny today and to touch on what is human design and how can we work with this beautiful, beautiful craft, if you will, to retrieve our soul, for a soul retrieval and the impact that it can have on our life. And so before we get started, Jenny, welcome to the show. Welcome to Lucy Smiles Living Room.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Diane. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
I'm excited. It's 4:00 in the afternoon for me here in Mexico, and it's 9 a.m. tomorrow for Jenny.
We're time traveling.
We are. Listen, this is what the show is all about. So Jenny, before we get started, just a little bit about Jenny Lethbridge. Jenny is a healer, a wayshower, and is dedicated to energizing, enlightening beings and seekers to help them to navigate through challenging times. She focuses on creating harmony, empowering people to reclaim their own power. And with a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience in various modalities and spiritual practices, Jenny also works with quantum healing modalities. And she combines the two with her extensive experience in human resources, which helps to have a unique blend that allows her to offer a holistic approach to her coaching, her teaching, and her healing work. So Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I am excited.
Yeah.
So I would love to dive in, but for the audience, those that are watching or if they're listening, depending on the platform, because even for myself, I was not familiar with human design. I had kind of heard of it for a couple of years, actually, but until I actually looked into what it is, I was very unfamiliar. For those that are unfamiliar, what is human design? Can you explain to us holistically, what is it exactly? And what is it different than other potential modalities that people may be familiar with?
Fantastic. Yeah. Great question. Yeah, sure. it might be helpful just for me to talk a bit about, I guess, my journey coming to finding human design myself and why I was so excited when I found it. And so I've spent many years in the corporate space working as a human resource professional. And in my time that I worked there, I worked with what we call psychometric testing tools, right? So I've been accredited and I've used, things like Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is some of the tools that are more widely known. And I love them because it started to help people understand more about who they were. So that's really something that I've been quite passionate about. And so I've really have done a deep dive into a number of these different tools. Anyway, I also probably, 10, 15 years ago, really started to understand how important energy was, right? And yes, I now work as an energy healer, but, back then I started to realize that there was this incredible dynamic going on that nobody talked about. And that was this whole energetic dynamic between people. And in my corporate, jobs, I spent months, years teaching people about communication skills and how to improve relationships and things like that, particularly in a workplace setting. And particularly as a coach, you certainly delve into that, to a great extent. And so I started to realize that a lot of these tools that we were working with were what I call two-dimensional. Right. So, yes, everything's helpful. Don't get me wrong. Very, very helpful. But when I started to understand this whole energetic dynamic that nobody talked about, but everybody knew, I would say to people, how do you feel when you're with someone and you feel that your energy is being drained? And they said, oh, yes, I know people like that in my life. So people know that this is going on, but no one teaches you about this unless you go looking, I guess. Anyway, so I left the corporate world because my time was done there, and I started to, then learn a number of different healing modalities. And along that journey, someone showed me human design. And they said to me, and it was just over coffee, and that's how these things happen, don't they? They're just impromptu conversations. And this person said to me, this is this tool that just combines everything. So I just had to go and have a look at it, and I fell in love with it. Why? Because it tells you about energy and how you show up energetically and how you impact others energetically. So that was one of the key things that really engaged me about it. The other thing was that it doesn't compare you to anyone else's model of what we should be like, right? It really gives you deep information about who you are at an authentic level. It's an unusual tool in the sense that it's a channeled foundation of information. It was channeled by a Canadian man, as it turns out, back in 1987. And it took him 5 years to bring it forward into a format that people could then work with it. And all you need is your date of birth, time of birth, and location of birth. And then it produces all of this information that it is so incredibly accurate. Sometimes I have clients say to me that they said, I have to do a double take and just realize what I haven't given you any information about myself other than, my date of birth and those details, and that you're able to tell me all this information about me. And so it's incredibly accurate. You can't deny the accuracy of it. And as they say, the proof is in the eating of the pudding, isn't it? So,
yeah. So really how many years ago was this that you were introduced over coffee? So
it would have been probably around 2017, I think.
Okay, amazing.
With regard to that. So then I started to really delve into it. It's quite a complex system. And at one point I thought, I'm not sure that I'm really going to get this, but I did. The penny eventually dropped, and then I was able to start doing readings for other people, and then start to introduce it in in quite a major way into the work that I do. And particularly in the coaching work, I do more healing work now than I do necessarily the coaching. But for people to understand who they are at the core level is what human design does. And the challenges that we've got at the present moment is that the systems, particularly the social systems, the education systems that we have lived in or with, they are more around people, being something that they are not. We get lost in these systems due to the pressure to be a particular way, or behave a particular way, or show up in a particular way. And sometimes it's really hard to know who we are at a core level. And human design will help people understand who they are. And there's no comparing you, as I said, to someone else's model about, how we should be. And I think that's incredibly important.
I love that. And I'll tell you as well, because as you were saying, how you have clients, how it's impeccable when they work with you. And so the reason why I was like, I need to have you on the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast is because my experience with you was so significant. And we will touch on, the profiles and the different, like just the chart and all of that type of thing. But it was really interesting for me because as I spent 2 hours with you, I hadn't known who you were until I was introduced to you through a friend of mine who I trusted. And I had wanted to learn about human design, but I was overwhelmed. I would try and then I'd walk away. And I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to do it properly. How can I find someone who knows what they're doing? And so in my sitting with you, this was probably, if I could remember, October of last year. So October of 23. And as you were sharing my human design chart and we were going through things, you would always ask me, you're so eloquent and asking me, does this resonate with you? Does this? And I would sit there flabbergasted because you literally were pretty much telling me who I was, even to the point because you didn't know me. And this was so impeccable that I had literally already hired a coach to teach me around how to create my podcast. And I remember I was having my session with you as a Sunday evening, my time. And the next day was a Monday in January, or it was a Monday. And I had already had a coaching session with this other woman for my podcast. And I never told you that. And you said, I mean, it's impeccable, but I want the audience to hear this, is that you said that my type of chart would be like a writer or someone who wants to do a podcast and reach the world with my voice. And I felt like someone snuck you like a cheat note. That's how, that's how accurate you were. So I really want to dive in, Jenny, around, because people could say, okay, well, what is it? What are you talking about? So can we dive in, because how you shared the intro is amazing. Now, could we dive into what is it we're looking at? Because you said how it combines a bunch of things. So I think there are 5 different elements that it combines. So can you talk about that and then maybe into the profiles and why we're so unique?
Okay, look, absolutely. Yes, indeed. Human design is a synthesis of what I call 4 major bodies of wisdom. The main one is astrology. So there's a definite, link, and there's a huge amount of astrological information that is in your human design. It also is the Chinese I Ching, the Judaic Kabbalah, and the tree of life with regard to that, and the chakra system. So when you see the body graph, so once I receive information about someone's date of birth, their place of birth and time of birth, I run a chart, and it's actually easy for anybody to run a chart. There's so many, available on the web. You just pump in that information and it'll generate a chart. The key is understanding what the chart means, I guess. So it's once you see the chart, you could see just immediately in it, the alignment between these other systems I referred to, but it's a synthesis of them. It also involves quantum physics, and it's really where I say spirituality meets science. And so when we put that information into the various programs that we do it generates what we call a body graph. And the body graph provides all this information about these codes that we hold within our body. It's the codes of our DNA. And so the key to understanding human design is being able to read the chart and then can see and then decode what it means. It's archetypal. So essentially, I mean, the philosophy I have about human design is that we had an agreement before we came into this lifetime, right? That we wanted to achieve certain things. We wanted to grow as a soul. We had a purpose in terms of how we contribute to humanity's evolution. And when you start to understand the body graph and what's there in the human design chart, we're essentially decoding all of that information. It's an energetic blueprint. And so we're holding these codes. And the beauty of it is that it's up to us in terms of what we choose to do with it. You know, nobody's putting us in a box or put you in a box and says you're this or you're that. It's really up to you in terms of how you work with that information in order to step into the best version that you can be in this lifetime. It's sort of how I see it. And it's like we all have a piece of the cosmic plan. So, you know, understanding your human design really understands what that piece is.
Right. And then there are different profiles, right? So like, for instance, I was aware through the work with you that I am, as an example, just for me as an example, I'm a manifester. And I know there's a specific percentage of the population that are certain profiles. And then not only the profile, but also the two different numbers that classify as different like subcomponents. So I'm a role model and a hermit. And I'll tell you, even just learning about that through you explaining it, because if I saw that online, it would not make any sense to me. But you explained it to me and it made me realize I almost honored who I was more than beating myself up for not doing certain things. So like I would beat myself up for not generating and not being like, but I realized through my own profile that I'm someone who has a high vision, like a big vision, and I manifest, and it made so much sense because that resonates with me. And then with the role model hermit, as an example, because I want to talk about, you know, how they all are, like the role model, I realize, yes, I am, but I also do have to hermit. Like I get this point where I have to retreat. And I never knew why I would act like that. And then you explained it to me and it's my coding. And so I was like, I'm allowed to honor that now rather than beat myself up because of how I'm behaving. So can you touch on that, the different profiles, or however you want to eloquently just, you know.
No, thank you. No, that's excellent. There are 5 key, what we call energy types within human design. So when I do a reading for someone, I assume they don't know anything about human design. So I really do go through how the body graph comes into existence, and that so that when they're looking at their body graph, they get an understanding. They have a context, I guess, is what I'm doing with regard to that. Excuse me. And then I go through the entire body graph and talk about the various gates and channels and centers that are defined in the body graph. And that's where I really start to decode the archetypal themes that each individual is carrying. And that's where you really start to get an understanding of, oh my gosh, you know, this is so accurate. You are describing exactly who I am. And as you said, sometimes and often we're not the same. Well, we're certainly not the same as everybody else, but there are certain aspects about how we prefer to operate that is sometimes different from the norm. Like, for example, you know, I've got a client that comes to mind. He's a lovely man. He is incredibly disorganized, right? Now, he has struggled in his entire life with this issue of being disorganized. That's how we in the third dimension would see him, right? However, he has a number one gate in his design is the gate of extremes, which means that he has to follow all of the natural rhythms of who he is, right? Which shows up like he's being incredibly disorganized. And so it really validated who he was and really said, hey, you've really got to honor this and to really live, you know, for you to really step into the best version of yourself, you need to honor these rhythms that are not necessarily the same every day. And so it really made a huge difference to him to understand that about him. And so,
Right.
it's really, as I said, going through and understanding the various gates that are defined, the channels that are defined in your chart, and the centers, and understanding what that means for the individual in terms of how that shows up in day-to-day life. Then, as I said, I concentrate on the type, the profile, and the incarnation cross. And so the type, there are 5 energy types in human design. And as you described, you're a manifester. It's only 9% of the population are manifestors.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have this large group of generators, the pure generator, about 35% of the population, and then manifesting generators, who are a combination of the generators and the manifestors. And so just in this alone, having 70% of the population with generator ability, it means they've got this unlimited energy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we live in a world that expects us to just keep going and going and going to have this energy. But it's only 70% of the population actually has that, right?
Wow.
And so what the generators can do is share their energy with some of the other types that don't have unlimited energy, like the manifestor, and also the 4th type, which is the projector.
Mm-hmm.
They have quite a challenging time because they don't have unlimited access to energy. And so trying to keep up
Mm-hmm.
with the generator types is very challenging for me. The 5th type is a reflector, is only 1% of the population, so they're
Wow.
quite rare. And they have very open human designs, which means that they take in energy from others, and they can be extremely sensitive with that as well. So each of the types are very different, and they operate very differently. And as you said, the manifestor is the visionary. They can just go out there and do it and make things happen, because they are designed to initiate and to manifest, which is
Right.
really exciting. The generator groups are here to build the form. So the manifestors really need the generators in order to bring things to fruition and to
Wow.
create things in the material world. The projectors are here to direct others. They're like the orchestra conductor, right?
Wow.
Is how I describe their type to them, and they're the ones. They're 20. I think about 20% of the population, as I said, are projectors, and they're the ones that probably have the greatest aha and relief when I explain who they are. Because they really have found it difficult trying to keep up with everybody else, and
Mm.
really feel that there's something wrong with them because they can't keep up energetically with
Wow.
large part of the population. So it's really a profound thing to understand for a projector.
Have you worked with a lot of reflectors, being that they're only 1% of the whole? Have you
I've
worked with?
only, I've only met one.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure I'll meet more along the way, but
Yeah.
their type is incredibly rare, as I said, 1%. What's
Mm-hmm.
interesting about their type is when you meet them, you meet yourself. Why?
Mm.
Because they take in your energy and they reflect it back to you.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
so interesting. And going into so those are the 5 types.
Sorry, types, yes. Yeah,
Right, and then we have, I mean, to get a little bit more intricate, we
profiles.
don't have to touch on it too in depth, but I think it's really important when I think about, okay, so there's those 5, and then we'd go through the different components of the 2 numbers, and what
Yeah,
makes the first number different than the second number? Because I'm a 6-2, so I'm a
yes.
role model hermit, not a hermit role model. Is there a difference? And what, and
Yeah,
tell explain a couple of examples of what that is, how it goes into
fantastic.
the
Yeah,
whole.
yeah. No, certainly can do that.
Yeah.
Human design is, to start with, so to understand the difference between the 2 numbers, is
Mhm.
what we call a binary system. It provides information that is in our conscious mind. It also provides information that is unconscious as well, and it blends the 2.
Okay.
The conscious information it's like our soul or our personality, and the unconscious is more around what we carry in our body, or the genetics, because we're a combination of both of those things. We're a soul in a human body having a human experience at the present moment. So human design pulls both of that information together and then gives you a combination of that. That's another reason why it's so powerful, to include both those aspects. So within human design, we have 13 conscious activations and 13 unconscious activations. And the activations come from where the planets are when we're born. And the number one and the most important planet in our design is our sun sign. And so whatever gate is activated in our conscious sun and in our unconscious sun is where we get those profiles from. So, for example, I'm a 62.1. And so my number one is the first number of my profile, which is the investigator. Oh. And also my unconscious sun sign is the 61. And 3 is the profile. So that's where they come from. That's why they're different, and that's why you have 2 of them. So there are 6, the 1 and the 3 in this case, and for you the 6 and the 2 are called lines, and they come from the Chinese I Ching hexagram, the lines, the 6 lines of the hexagram. And so the profiles then have different names associated with them. The 1 for me is the investigator. The 3 for me is also the martyr, whereas you are a role model hermit. So they all have different names. If I run through them, the number 1 is the investigator, the 2 is the hermit, the 3 is the martyr, the 4 is the opportunist, the 5 is the heretic, and the 6 is the role model. They have quite unusual names. They're the names that come from traditional human design, but they all mean something really quite profound when they come together as well. So you, Diane, as you said, you are a number 6, which is the role model, which means that you're here to really live out your authentic purpose, right? Now, we all are. Once we step into a human design, that's all what it helps us all to do. However, the role models are here to really show others how to do it. So you are here to really show the world what it is to be authentically who you are. Because when you do that, you empower others to do that as well. And that, I think, is so important in terms of this evolutionary journey that we're on currently on planet Earth. The second line for you is the hermit, which means that you do need to step back and allow time to process. And this is something that, and it's not necessarily something that you do consciously, but it's something that you feel energetically drawn to do, to step back. It's because you carry, the 6/2s are also known as the wise souls, right? So they're old souls. They've got a lot of wisdom. And so it's really about you step back in order to process your life experiences, whatever's played out for you, and then for you to make sense of it and then to bring it back out as wisdom, to help others is essentially how the 6/2 works together.
It's interesting that you say that. And then I want to turn the conversation over to how it's evolving moving forward. But it's interesting that you say that, because I want people to understand from a practical, personal perspective, is that whenever I did work with you and you explained as an idea, because there's so many different things that you could be, like career that you could be depending on the human design, and it could be, there's a plethora. It doesn't have to just be if you're a manifestor role model, you need to be a writer. It's not about that. But when you did share with me, the writing that I've been channeled over the last 18 years for me has been literally living an experience, processing it, and then writing it to share my vulnerability. And so it was impeccable for me that you shared that, and you didn't know anything about me. And so I think it's really important. It's almost like a gift that I believe we all deserve to have, simply because it allows us to have that clarity, where a lot of times for many of us, for a long time, decades even, we could be running lost or trying to be what everyone else is, trying to do what everyone else is doing, and then that's very, dangerous. And it also, we could feel it. Like you said, I would love to go back to, you talk about energy. And I think it's just so important because if we are understanding our human design as an example, we get to learn more about the energy that we feel, the energy that we resonate with, and also maybe don't align with. And it just allows us to really honestly be in our most authentic place
Mm,
on this timeline, and I think it's such a gift. If
mm,
not, I think it's like it should be mandatory. So I would love to talk to you around, where do you see this going? Because again, you've been in this space with human design since 2017. Where do you see this evolving, and what do you feel is your role of how you can actually reach the masses with this? And do you
mm.
see it as something that could potentially start to get into more mainstream? So but say we've got Myers-Briggs. I mean, I've done every personality test under the sun, still was confused until I was like, I mean, that's why I kept on going. What's next? What's next? And then when I found you and I found human design, I don't need any more. I get
No,
it.
it's
And
it.
so, right? And so do you see, like, where do you see this going? And in that, my part B question is, are there any misconceptions around human design that you've encountered? Or is there anything you'd like to clear up around that can help people really understand?
Right. Okay. So in terms of where it's going, well, probably the best way for me to answer that is to say that I think it's really clear to most people now that we're in quite extraordinary times, right? You can listen to the astrologers and they will tell you that we are in, cosmic alignments that haven't happened for, in some cases, thousands of years. So we really are in extraordinary times. And so this
Yeah.
decade, I feel in particular, is incredibly pivotal for the evolution of humanity. And I really do believe that we have all come here, a large number of us have come here to experience this and to contribute to what is currently playing out. It's epic, I would say, with regard to that. And I think that human design plays a critical part in that because, we have been incredibly conditioned and compromised, I feel, in terms of our ability to express ourselves and to be the unique beings that we are. And it's been so incredibly confusing. And so what I'm finding, and I started to see this before I left the corporate world, is people are searching. As you explained yourself, you were searching. So many people are searching, and they will show up and say to me, I'm here. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here. I just feel that I need to be here, which I
Yeah.
love because they have followed the energy. And I must just touch on that too, but I'll continue with the story and then
Yeah,
I'll go
no,
back
sure.
to it.
Mhm.
And so human design, someone has actually described it. It's a tool for our times.
Yeah.
And it is because it actually helps people understand authentically who they are. And it absolutely gives them more courage to step into it. And if I was to say that there was anything common about what people do say to me about my reading with them, is they say, because I'm not sure that I always give them information that they're not actually aware of. I think the way I present it is probably new. I frame it in a completely different way through the lens of human design. But what they say is, oh my gosh, you have just validated who I am. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is the most important thing, because that's that, if you call it validation, it's like, I will now step into that more powerfully.
Exactly.
Up until that point, it's like there's something wrong with me,
Yeah.
right?
And I
I
was
don't.
there.
That's it. The whole system is based on what I call a deficit model, which is
Ah, yeah.
everything is focused on what is wrong with us, our weaknesses, and it's not till really I did a huge journey into positive psychology, which started to then focus on strengths. It's just, but it's nothing as profound as human design, because
Mhm.
human design is authentically who we are, who we came here to be, how we came here to show up. And as I said, it's this decade is really the time that we need to do the showing up. And what's happening energetically is that people are seeking, they're no longer able or wanting to be in that compromised state, be that square peg in a round hole. And organisations are very good at doing that. They all want, people to be compliant and fit in with this particular model. Makes it easier, I think, for them. But people are no longer able to do that. And they're getting burnt out. They're getting burnt out because they're trying to be something that they are not. We show up wearing a mask, to work most of the time because, who we are uniquely is not celebrated or valued or encouraged in any particular way. So I think human design and the role that it plays now is to help people to step more powerfully into truly who they are. Because now is the time, the decade, for us to really own that uniqueness. Because when we do that, that is when the magic happens, totally. And it takes a degree of trust also in order to do this. And what I certainly need to, I think, just highlight about human design is that it provides you with information about your inner guidance system. We all have a way of how our body talks to us that is going to give us information that we need in order to make really good decisions about our life. And it's different. I mean, we've been conditioned to believe it's our brain or our mind that does that. And yes, don't get me wrong, our mind is incredibly powerful and really, really helpful. However, our body holds greater wisdom, and human design, part of what we call the strategy and the authority, is helping people understand what their inner guidance system is. Right. And it could be, and it's very much around intuition and trusting the energy. And when we really work with our authority and our strategy, we will find ourselves in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with the right people.
That's amazing.
And trusting that. And so it's such a valuable contribution that human design can offer us with that alone.
Yeah. And I have so many things I want to share. I love how you shared that. So as you were expressing all of this beautiful information, a couple of things came to me. So when you were talking about, because this is exactly for myself and many others that I had said, you need to talk to Jenny. Trust me. And so I want to talk about what the coaching looks like. But before that, I want to talk about how it is a validation, and if anything, is a confirmation. Because as you had shared, when you are expressing the components of the human design with the people that you work with, it's like it's everything they already know, but they didn't know that they were allowed to know it. It's almost like hidden pieces that come out of these gates and these literal gates that you're showing, and it's a confirmation. And so one of the other things that came to me based on my experience with you is that where I may have kind of lied idle for a little bit longer around, I'm a little afraid to, for my mission. After chatting with you, I'm like, I have a mission, and I clearly signed up for this class. And so it allowed me to push the fear aside a lot more than I had previously allowed myself to push through that fear. And so it really supported my growth. It supported my own evolution. It supported this podcast. Because I was able to say, you know what, I am here for a purpose, and everyone is so different. So my purpose is not meant to be my best friend's purpose or my sister's purpose or my spouse. And so I think that's really important for people to understand. And another thing that you had mentioned that I wanted to kind of piggyback on is that there is so much going on in the world, and we talk, without having to go through the details, we're all very privy, is that, one of the things that one of my, I love Lee Harris, and he talks about pay attention to your address, meaning pay attention to you. We can't change all of the things that are happening outside of us. If anything, it's just going to make us lose our minds. But when we could pay attention to our own, like you said, inner guidance system, that's going to change the world. And so I would love for you to touch a little bit on that. And then also bring in your coaching and what that looks like. Because before we pressed record to have this conversation, you were talking about how you were even unaware of the ripple effect that happens when I decide to live my best life, to live in my own authenticity. Then my relationships are changing. And that ripple effect is priceless when it comes to, that's how we change the world. Not trying to end what's going on outside of us, but to ignite what's inside of us. So can you touch on that in your coaching and what you've seen that's allowed people to have that ripple effect?
Yes, that's great. Yes, it's an inside job. as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, there's so little at the present moment out there that we can control, but we're not meant to. And what human design really emphasizes is the beingness, uniquely how we show up and how we, are designed to be. And when we really embrace everything that's in our human design, we start to show up in the best version that we are. When we do that, we shine our light brightly. And that is when we start to change people, because the way in which we shine our light brightly is where we're generating energy, and others are taking in that energy. So, for example, as I said, with Align 6, the role models, for people to see you, Diane, step so fully into your purpose and to be that best version of yourself, then encourages others to take that step and find that courage and do that as well. So, that is extraordinary, and that's where the ripple effect starts. And we don't necessarily see that, as we were talking about prior to you pressing record. I do many, many readings, and often that is the only time I will ever, meet that client. I always have a belief that when someone comes to see me, whether it's for a healing or for a reading or a coaching, whatever it is, that I know, I trust, and I know that the universe has sent them, and that I have something that's important to share with them. I don't necessarily know what that is, because I too follow the energy and my intuition around these sorts of things, but I totally trust that they're there for a reason. And often I tell them that as well. And I know that wherever they go, there will be that's my ripple effect. It's where I start, the ripple starting, and then where they go to and what they then become as a result of what I have done for them and with them, then ripples out even further. And that's how we change. That's how we change the world, isn't it? In terms of, that ripple effect is so powerful, but we don't in the moment necessarily see it. And that's where I think the shining of our light is so, so powerful. We are, we are so, we see ourselves as so much smaller than who we truly are, right? We are so much brighter. And human design, once again, is a way to understand what that brightness can be. I call it a map of possibility.
Wow.
It's an invitation to step into the fullness of what you came here to be. And how incredibly exciting is that in these times?
And how honorable.
Yeah.
Now that we this is so relevant to go back to you around, because as the conversation started and how you were working in corporate, you're working in human resources, you were touching on some of the more mainstream personality modalities, if you will. So my tagline for Lucy Smiles Living Room, and the reason why I, founded this podcast for myself, was that I had conversations with those behind the scenes, and I was like, people need to hear our conversation. And so the reason for me doing this is because of you're a huge example. So what I would love to ask you, because my tagline of my living room of the podcast is follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And so clearly you, Jenny, making that personal decision to go from corporate human resources to, quantum human design is a huge leap. It's a quantum leap, if you will. So, but you're making that decision. I just got chills. You're making that decision has so impacted so many people. And what I would like to support the audience with, because many people watching this can be saying to themselves, I'm not good enough. I could never do what they do. Where do I start? What are people going to think, right? Is that courage to be disliked? So can you share and touch on what that looked like for you? How did you make that decision to follow the magic that ignited your inner essence that is literally going to be continuing to shift the world? You've shifted my just one, the power of the one, plus many of my connections. So how did you decide, I'm not going to care what other people think? I'm going to go from being in that potential box to leaping out of it. And can you talk about what that looked like, or any resources or tools that helped you to keep going and not kind of turtle back?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really big question. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had a very long, extensive, and successful career in organisations,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the last 5 years of my career, I really started to feel like a square peg in a round hole, and incredibly disillusioned.
Wow.
Right? It's not as though I hadn't seen it for what it was. It was just that I could no longer tolerate it and work within it. The injustices was what affected me the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I understand now is I was starting to really shift as a soul at that point. And that's why what once I would have accepted as okay and the norm, I couldn't anymore. And so, it was huge for me to leave that. I knew that I would never go back to that, life. And I had spent many years building a career, a
Mm-hmm.
reputation, credentials, all of that, right? I completely turned my back on all of it, and which was a huge decision. So when I resigned, which was hard, even handing in the resignation and walking away from that to heavens knows what, because I knew that I had to go into my own business, and that I needed to start to explore other, ways that I could help people. I was
Mm-hmm.
so passionate about that. And that took me on a journey through a number of different modalities. I'd already learned Reiki prior to leaving the corporate world. And I really started a journey into the whole esoteric space, as such. So I had already started the journey before I actually left. And I was certainly working with human design too before I left the corporate world. But
Right.
when I did, I then followed the energy. And this was a big thing for me. And it's also something that I understand now as part of my design. I am very well. We should all follow the energy. That's important in whatever way we're uniquely designed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a higher level, I guess, a high level of trust around that as well, given some of my definition in human design as well. So I would often find myself in courses, and I'd be saying to the people, I don't know why I'm here, but I just know I need to be here. That's the type of trust that I'm talking about, right? So
Yeah.
it's like stepping into an unknown space, leaving behind everything that was, for lack of a better word, very secure in more ways than one, into, I don't know where I'm going, but I am so called to follow this energy that I just have to do it. And I just found myself in the most amazing situations, learning the most amazing modalities that
Mm-hmm.
not only helped me explore more about who I am, but what I am able to do in order to help people. Now, I'm talking mainly about healing modalities that I'm talking about, and some of them were not easy. They
Right.
were, I mean, one of the biggest ones I can remember stepping into is a modality that I learned called Palladian light work. And it was a 9-day one-on-one intensive, right?
Wow.
Healing.
Yeah.
That was a game changer for me. And I remember my teacher, lovely, lovely lady, and she would take me through a process, and she said, okay, I've got a client calling in, you're going to now do it. And
Wow.
seriously, I went to pieces. Why? Because I hadn't had enough time. I said to her, I haven't studied the process. I can't
Yeah.
do it. She said, you don't need to study the process. That was one of the biggest learning points for me, was to let go of everything that I had relied on through my entire career. There was always a process that I could learn, trust me, many. And so, to then totally trust my intuition. I
Right.
can remember I was sweating. I was that nervous, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had teed up a client for me to, and she was there.
Yeah.
And I had nowhere to go other than to trust my intuition. That was a huge turning point for me.
Wow.
And I just learned so much in those 9 days that I spent with her. I'm eternally grateful for her. But, it's really, as I said, it's that trust where you really start to trust the energy and step into that greater version of who you are, is
Mm-hmm.
when the magic happens. And so, because of that and other things that I've certainly experienced and explored since then, has really found me in the place that I am today, and where I can now profoundly help people in such, important ways. The healing work I do now is around stabilization, because there's so many people who are destabilized at the present moment. So, the healing modality that I do primarily helps people to stabilize into, more in alignment with who they are. And, human design works beautifully with that.
Wow. We have to definitely have like a part 2 interview conversation, because you also touched on Palladian. And I was like, I just read a book called Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak.
Oh, I've heard for years.
Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, the world as I thought I knew it.
No, well, you're probably just starting the journey.
And I know it's interesting. And I read it on an airplane. So I was like up in the sky, connected like so much, it was mind blowing to me as
Yeah.
I turned the pages. And it's like, you almost don't even know what you're reading, but I felt it in my body.
Yes,
I felt
yeah.
all of the pages in my body, regardless of if the words I was reading didn't even make sense to me. So that's interesting. So I would love to, talk to you more about that offline around that. And I think it's really important too, as even sharing that experience, is that there are so many things that we are remembering now. And I
Yes.
think that this is the timeline that we're on for those that are, have signed up for this. And I think it's really beautiful. So can you touch on, as we're closing out, Jenny, because this could be scary for some people.
Yes.
This could be something where, again, they could just decide the fear is too big, and they want to stay comfortable. Like you said, you're comfortable, things are going really well, but there's that inkling inside of many of us. And that was me, 20 years ago, where I'm like, something is going on, something is different. And I felt alone. This was back in
Okay. Yeah.
2007. So can you share what that looks like in terms of, building community that's going to be aligned for people, or where they could find people, or any tools that you would support their mental state and maybe their nervous system going through feeling this change, but being afraid to allow it?
Yeah. I think, no, that's a really good point. The most important thing is to find your tribe now, and that is happening. A lot of things have happened over the last 4 years where people have found that they no longer resonate with family members, and that's created some really challenging times, of relationships to navigate. So, and that is still playing out, because the people, those that are really on this soul journey, at the present moment, are finding that, that the people potentially that they've spent the best part of their life with no longer sort of resonates in the way that it did, and others are coming into their life. And I think once we start to believe more in ourselves and to step more into that better version of ourselves that we've talked about, what then happens is new people show up, right, in our life, and in those chance meetings and of like-minded people. And I think, and it might just start with one person, but then it can lead to another person. I created, this is a bit off site here, but probably about, maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, I started a tarot group. And we meet on Sunday afternoons, and that grew and that grew. And it was the community that really kept us, how could I put it, stable in those times when things were incredibly destabilizing back in 2020 or thereabouts. We were all together. We were all of like mind. We are such a different group in terms of just different individuals, different ages, coming from all different walks of life. But there was something that pulled us together. And I think community is the key thing that we need to really focus on now. And that is to really work with others and spend more time with people who light us up rather than pull us down. That is
Absolutely.
another key part of it as well. And anyone can start a community, and it doesn't have to be, a big, thing. It can be you catch up, as a group for coffee every so often. It can be as informal as that. And Zoom is marvelous. You can get online and connect with people, and it's so easy. It's incredibly easy. And so, the community and being with like-minded people who lift you up is really a key part of being able to hold your vibration high and to continue to step more fully into the uniqueness of who you are. It's because that community will honor that and help you and support you to do that rather than pull you down. So, I think, making some decisions about, where we spend our time in terms of with the people that do support us is really important now. And sometimes that's around more healthy boundaries about, who we allow to access our energy as well. It starts to come into the conversation, with regard to that as well. So, yeah, communities are very important, and finding them, I think sometimes trusting and putting the energy out there is important as well. And that helps. And as I said, these chance, contacts with someone or meetings, the world's full of synchronicities. And when synchronicities are happening, you're on the right path. We just have to be open to them and to recognize them when they happen. And when we do, and you follow it, and I call that following the energy, you'll find yourself, in the most magical of places.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you had said too, sometimes we are the ones that start the community. So it's great to find people. And sometimes we are the ones that just take that initiative, and maybe we go out meetup.com, or there's so many different beautiful places, not only locally, but also, as we've seen, globally, you being in Australia and me being in Mexico, and here we are connected. I would love to, in closing, Jenny, I like to ask a question at the end, but my question for you would be, what is some, really just, you almost already answered it, but like for people new into the human design realm, what is some advice that you would give them in terms of, tapping into it? Obviously, clearly, I would say contact you, but is there anything specific, like there's some books that they could start with? For you, I will have all of your information in the show notes. I highly recommend Jenny as a coach because she just clears the cobwebs of confusion when it comes to understanding human design. But are there books that you recommend, or is there anything that you recommend, or how you?
Yes. So that's a really good question. There's a huge amount of information on the internet now about human design, and also too, the interest in human design is just escalating at the present moment, and I think that is really the reflection of people who are seeking and then realizing how human design can be part of the answer, that they're looking for. And so, there is so much information on the web with regard to that. I'm a great follower of a thought leader in human design called Dr. Karen Curry Parker. She's related. She studied with the founder of Human Resources, so she's had an incredible solid background in the traditional human design, but she's also created her version of human design for modern times, which is called quantum human design, and I'm a great follower and supporter of her. So any of the books that Karen Curry Parker has written, there are a number, and she's written a couple that are really great for people who are just starting to explore human design. And I can perhaps, give you the titles of those books, and you can put that as a link or something with regard to it. So I would say she would be a great starting point if you want to start to read books about it. Otherwise, get on the web. You can download charts. I use geneticmatrix.com. You can get a free chart there, and that's a starting point. And then, I would love to do a reading for you and help you on your because, as I said, I assume people know very little or nothing about human design when they come to see me. And I said to the client I did a reading for last week, I said, in this 2 hours, I'm going to give you enough information that will keep you on a journey for the rest of your life. And that's really what it is. Exploring
Totally.
just that alone. Yeah.
Yeah. So where can we find you, Jenny? Where can we find you? Your email, social
Yeah.
media? Where's the best place to connect with
Fantastic. The
you?
best way is to connect with me via my website, which is enlightenedway.com.au. So, and you can email me at jenny@enlightenedway.com.au.
Beautiful.
And so I'm very happy to offer to people a free, conversation just to hear, for me to hear where they are at and what they're looking for. And then I can provide, information about how I can help them in terms of taking the next step on their journey. So that's probably the best way to connect with me. Thank
I
you.
love that. And because you do human design, but then again, you're also touching on more, all-encompassing types of work like the stabilization. So that's not just
I
one
know.
component, you're really putting it all together, which I think is really amazing because then they're not just going off saying I had, it's integration and everything. As you
Yeah.
know, in this day and age with all of the different work that we're doing, the different inner work that we're doing, the integration is a huge component of that. I know for myself. And so having someone like you to be, to have our backs during this, exploratory situation around human design and stabilization and all those other things, holistic approach, I think is really valuable. So I am so grateful, Jenny. This is amazing. I love that you're able to touch on so much in such a short period of time. And just really grateful that I was able to sit here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. As I said, I feel incredibly honoured to be here, and you have helped me also touch so many more people and to commence that ripple effect, which helps me, I think, fulfil the purpose that I've came here to fulfil. So thank you so much
Wow.
for that.
It is such a pleasure. So thank you to all of our friends who were able to tap into either watching us on YouTube or following our platform on podcast platforms out there on the Lucy Smiles Living Room. I hope that you were able to get even a little bit of insight around what could be a huge new opening for you to tap into your soul, to be able to retrieve things around human design and why you're here and your mission to serve through this beautiful component that I think is really just relevant, if not mandatory, for us to really tap in. So thank you so much for watching. We will catch you next time. And as I always like to say, make sure to follow the magic that ignites your own inner essence, and that'll help to create a ripple effect all over the world. So thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Hey friends, thank you again for following and tuning in to the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. It really does truly support my mission to help inspire you through our beautiful guests that I also want to thank who have come on to share their beautiful stories of transformation. If you want to connect with me privately, you can actually go right to my website, lucysmiles.com. Feel free to send to me a personal email. You can also catch my newsletter by subscribing, which also includes my weekly intuitive messages. If you're on social media, you can follow me with my handle, I am Lucy Smiles. And if this was inspiring to you and something helped support you on whatever the journey is that you are going through, please feel free to review, write a comment, and most importantly, if you can subscribe and share this episode and all our other episodes, that would be amazing. My dream and my mission is to truly help you to follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And so until next time, we will catch you soon. I hope to catch you on the next episode.